In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to choose a tax consultant. Good day. My name is Heinrich. I'm the owner of the SA Accounting Network, and I've been in the accounting industry since about 2008. And over the years, I've helped many different people to file their tax returns. In today's video, we're going to explore a topic a little bit of how to choose a tax consultant. And I'm really privileged to have a professor on the line with me, Professor Keith Engel from an institute called SAIT, which is the South African Institute for Tax. He spent a little bit of his time with me to come have a chat about this topic. I think it's really relevant with the stuff that we're busy going through now. As the filing season is opening and within a couple of days, I decided to reach out to him and see if he'll be willing to have a chat with me. So let me head on to my computer, then I can show the interview that I did. Once again, just remember to give this video a like if you did enjoy the content, and remember to hit the subscribe button as well. Okay, let's shoot out to my computer, and I can show you the interview. Hello, Professor, are you doing well?
I'm doing well.
Yeah, lovely. It's lovely to have you on the channel. Do you maybe want to give us just a broad introduction, maybe just explain to me a little bit what SAIT is about? I think a lot of viewers out there don't know what it stands for and what it actually entails.
Yes, and we've changed the name over time as well. We are the South African Institute of Taxation. So we are a professional body for tax people. Now, to make it easy, doctors have their own professional body. Lawyers have a professional body. Accountants have several professional bodies. So there's one tax professional body for tax people. That's us. You can be a tax person with an accounting body or with a legal body if you want, but we feel we are the best home for you.
Yes. So I think one of the things, obviously, we've got the personal tax filing season starting now with the 1st of July. It's coming up around the corner. And I think the main purpose is we're going to be looking a little bit about tax consultants. I think that's the main topic for today that we want to discuss a bit. So I think just as a starting point, what is a tax consultant? What would you say is the, who could you classify as a tax consultant?
Yeah, well, you see, the thing is, when you look at the tax profession, even though we're all tax people, we all do different things. So, you can say, look, I'm a tax person. So what do you want? You want somebody who's a professional that you can rely on. Now, the core of getting the right person is assurance.
Yes.
People get lost in that when you file a return or you do the work with somebody, you want to know it's going to stand. That's really what it's all about, that you're safe, that SARS is happy, that it's been filed properly, and you won't hear from them again. You are actually paying for silence. That's what you really want when it comes to filing a return. Yes. Some people get confused and they want a refund, even if they don't deserve it. And that creates a problem because, yes, they might get a refund only to find that SARS audits them a couple months later, wanting the money back plus interest and heavy penalties. So that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for somebody who can do it properly and make sure it's done right so SARS doesn't come knocking down the road. That's what you're looking for. Yeah. Now, when you're looking for a tax person, where are you looking for? You're looking for a professional. Now, the thing about tax is, yes, there are accountants that can do it or preparers, but the question is, are they qualified? And so what you're looking for is a qualified preparer. That's what you're looking for. Now, to just close, just because somebody's a tax person doesn't mean they're good enough to file a return. Yes. So, for example, you can go to a law firm and the person is a great lawyer and they know tax beyond belief, but that's not the person you go to file a return with. You go to somebody who's typically an accountant or a preparer who does this every day. So you want to know not just their title, but what are they doing every day, and that's what you want. You want that specialist.
Yes, and I think it's just something that I can just add on there. I think that probably a tax practitioner is probably somebody that files a return for a fee, and I think the fee is probably one of the key words. And now the question arises is what gives somebody the right to be able to charge a fee to do a tax return? And I think that's where we can maybe just have a little bit of a look at the qualifications, because I can very easily say that now I'm a tax consultant because I've done 10 people's tax returns and I've got an idea what the IT12 form looks like, but it doesn't necessarily qualify me to be a tax practitioner. So maybe, let's just have a quick chat about that, just the theoretical knowledge that they need, and maybe a little bit of the practical stuff that they need to go through to be able to be called a tax consultant.
Yes, so I think the point about, well, one, you want them to have experience, so that is always good. The question is, do they have valuable experience? So that's what you're really trying to get at. To be a tax practitioner, when when a tax practitioner files a return, they have to be able to sign that return. Now, and that's very important. So if they need to sign the return, they need to qualify as a registered tax practitioner with the South African Revenue Service. In order to do that, they need to work through one of 10 professional bodies. We are the largest, so we say come to us because we know, we're focused. But you can go to the other 9 as well. So the practitioner needs to be with a professional body and need to be registered with SARS. Now that comes with certain requirements. As a general matter, what you want in a tax practitioner is somebody who's been schooled in it. So, for instance, the typical tax practitioner for tax compliance will be somebody who's had a BCom and they've decided to choose tax instead of accounting. Another one, if you're more on the litigation side, you'd have a lawyer who does tax. But for a person who's filing a return, it's usually going to be a BCom or somebody's had years of experience. So tax practitioners, SARS requires a degree and or years of experience in tax. And typically you want them being trained under someone else. So you've worked, I've worked for this firm and they're wonderful and I've been with them for a number of years and I've filed a lot of returns. That's the entry requirements. In addition, they must also be free of a criminal check. Got to make sure that they haven't done any fraud or criminal activities in the past. They themselves have to be tax compliant. So if the tax practitioner doesn't got their own returns right, SARS is going to bounce them. Say you're not a model. How can you be a practitioner if you're not a model in your own return? And there are also entry requirements now requires a 2-hour assessment. So SARS will make them go through a 2-hour assessment and be officially registered. So remember, for the private sector who's looking to find out whether this person qualifies, you should ask them which professional body they are, and you can go onto the website. So for instance, our website says verify a member. Say I'm with SAIT, therefore verify the member. You go on the system, there he is. Heinrich is there. I know he's good, he's qualified, and that's the formal requirements.
Yes, I think just something that I would like to add on top of that as well is, just for obviously we are registered accountants, we tax practitioners, but I personally belong to an institute called SAIPA, which is the Institute for Professional Taxons, now professional accountants, and part of that we have got a tax practitioner status. And part of me being able to keep that license, I have to do CPDs, which stands for Continual Professional Development. And if I want to be qualified as a tax consultant, I think I've got to do 12 hours verifiable training every year on tax. And I think that is also one of the key things, which is a really big benefit of using a registered tax practitioner, because that guy's on the edge of what's happening in terms of tax and stuff. So I think that's a big benefit. And we'll talk about fees and stuff just now to choose a tax consultant. But I think that's something that really differentiate a tax consultant, if you want to call it that way, with a backyard mechanic. Yeah. Because a lot of people out there say, no, but I'll do the books for the grocery store down the road, and I'll do it for you, and I'll charge you 100 Rand to do the return. But what are you getting for that 100 Rand? But we'll dive a little bit into that just now.
Yeah. Just to add to that, though, is, the bottom line is you do make the point. So, I'm pushing SAIT because I'm from SAIT. You're from SAIPA, and there's SAICA. I would say SAIT, SAIPA, and SAICA are the top professional bodies in tax. Yes. You can put them in any order you want. But when we go to meetings and we engage with SARS, those are the ones that are the most dedicated to tax and committed to tax. And yes, SAIPA itself has a segment of people in-house who deal with tax. And yes, one of the points that you're getting to is keeping up to date.
Yes.
So good practitioners, they've got to be on the edge. So when they're filing that return, they need to know the latest news. And so it's important that they are training and keeping themselves up to date to learn the latest. And that's usually what a good practitioner is hungering for. What is the latest? What is the latest development on home office, for example, was last year? What's the latest development on filing the return or receiving communication from SARS? Because typically it isn't just looking at the law and getting an answer. It's all those subtle things, that oral discussion, the little hidden rules that SARS has, that somebody who's current keeps up to date. And that's why CPD is so important.
Yeah, for sure. And just something that I might want to add as well over there is the reality is that one person can't know everything. And I always use this illustration with my clients as well, that I tell them I see myself as a GP, where I know a little bit about everything, but I don't specialize in any specific area. So if there's something new in the horizon, so something new that's popping up now is the tax on cryptocurrency. It's such a specialized field, and I think a general tax practitioner out there won't even know how to start completing that form. But that's where you need to know that that tax practitioner that you're using is backed by somebody that can assist you. So if a client comes to me, just going back to the illustration of a doctor, and he sees something funny in his skin, and that doctor doesn't know what it's for, about what that thing is, he's going to refer to a specialist. Then most tax consultants, actually, that's the advantage of belonging to an institute like SAIT, is that if I come across something upon somebody's thing, I'm not sure what that thing is, I can contact somebody in SAIT and say, listen, how do we deal with this thing? And I think that's the advantage, that you've got this backing of this institute behind you that can help you sort out stuff, because as I mentioned just now, that nobody knows everything. You need help from people out there. And just out of interest, like, how many members do you guys have at SAIT at the moment? How big is the institute?
About 8,600.
Yeah.
So that's quite a bit. We're the largest in terms of tax practitioners. There are 24,000 tax practitioners in total. Yeah. We have about a third of the market, which is the largest there. But the point that you raise is one of the challenges being a CEO of this institute is making sure I know everybody's subspecialties. One of the things that we need to do is make sure our members indicate their subspecialties a little bit louder, because you've got the right attitude. The point is, when you hire a general, it's a doctor, like the general doctor is exactly the answer. Yes. There's the general practitioner, but then if there's something that's a little funny, you got to go to the radiologist, right? And the reason why is, yeah, sure, you know the law, but like the cryptocurrency, the law itself isn't that hard. I'm sure that you actually know all of it. But your problem is, can you look at somebody's cryptocurrency account and understand what is going on in all those documents to connect it to the law?
Yes.
And that's where the challenge is. So a good practitioner knows when to farm it out.
Yes.
And that's very important. And because you have to be at the cutting edge to be a good practitioner, not just have general knowledge.
For sure. I think the next question that I maybe just want to touch on quickly, and I think is something that we can discuss together, is what to expect when you're using a tax consultant. And I think, just the process of somebody getting my number somewhere and they contacted me, what is the process supposed to look like? For let's say, for instance, you contact me and say, listen, Heinrich, please help me with my tax return.
Yeah.
Where do we start? Because some people say, no, I'll just get your login details quickly. I'll log into your filing, see, oh, there's IP5, I need to submit. But is that enough? Shouldn't there be a little bit more of a process behind that needs to happen? Do you maybe want to expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, look, I think it's good to get references if you can, like everything else. Again, it depends how big your return is. But the key thing I believe in, and you can tell me because you're on the coal face, is the engagement letter.
Yes.
This is where the problem is. Now, it's, if we're talking about different levels of return, if you're talking about a simple IT-12 return, well, people tend to skip that process, but that could be a problem. Yeah. But a good practitioner should actually give you an engagement letter, just like an accountant, just like a lawyer. What is that engagement letter? What do I promise to do for you at what price? People tend to go, you look like a nice guy, price is good. And then if you make a couple of oral promises, make sure you won't have to pay any taxes, you can get a refund. People tend to go for that. That's not what they should be going for. They really should first have a little bit of an interview and say, okay, what's your experience? Where are you coming from? Which professional body? What's your background? And yes, there's some reasons why I'm there. And okay, now when we want to talk about the deal itself, you should get an engagement letter that outlines the obligations of the practitioner vis-a-vis the taxpayer and the price.
Yes.
And I think that's critical. And that's where a lot of things go wrong.
Yeah.
So in an individual return, just to jump ahead, in an individual return, you say, well, it's pretty simple. I mean, you fill out the return, right? But now, that was great 20 years ago. File the return and everything's going to be fine. But now we have a different revenue service.
Yes.
So filing the return is battle number one. And in the old days, if you submitted 100 returns, maybe 2 would come back. But now you tell me, if you submit 100 returns, at least 30 to 40 are going to be checked by SARS. Maybe not manually, but electronically. So you need to know that your practitioner isn't going to leave you high and dry. And that's where the problem for taxpayers are on individual returns. They get a guy to file a return, and then if something goes wrong, they're on their own.
Yes.
And so you want to know that you're not going to be on their own. You need the assurance that that return will stand and that your practitioner will be with you.
Yeah, for sure. So I also just jotted down a couple of things that we normally follow our practice. I think the first step is the onboarding process, to get some information from your client, see what is it that they do, what's the complexity of the return. We normally tend to send out an information sheet to the guys to say, listen, these are all the possible things that we need to look at. So send us all this, send us all that, because otherwise they can turn around and say, oh, but you never asked me to, or do I own cryptocurrency? Now SARS caught me out, but you never told me about that. So we actually every year send out the information sheet, guys. Make sure that you send us all this information. After that, we look at the engagement letters as well, because those engagement letters need to be updated as well. You can't have one engagement letter from 20 years ago and they think that's going to stand. And then another thing also that's really important is power of attorneys. The receiver of revenue is quite strict these days that if I have to file a return on behalf of somebody else, that guy's got to give me a written power of attorney before I'm allowed to submit that return. And then just to do general review of the tax affairs, to ask the right questions. Some people, I heard a saying once where they say a clever person will give the right answer, but a wise person will ask the right question. So if you ask the right questions, you're going to get the right answers. And I think sometimes, like as in the old days, I would just call it the old days or the old way of doing things back then and say, no, give me your login details. Oh, yes, RP5, we hit the submit button, but that's not enough anymore. The whole tax landscape has changed. It's not the same as what it used to be 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, so I think that's a valid point. And I think just the process, of how to onboard a client. And we're going to talk about fees just now. I think it's actually the next question that we're going to touch on is...
Before we get to the fees, let me just add on. I think the point that shows you that even though you might call yourself a generalist, you're a specialist. Because the bottom line is when it comes to compliance, a good practitioner is going to give you a checklist.
Yes.
They're going to say, I don't want to, I'm just, because you've got to get all the documents together.
Yes.
And you've got to ask all the right questions.
Yeah.
And if they're not a good practitioner, they're not going to have a decent checklist.
Yes.
They're just going to have a random set of questions. So yes, the engagement letter, the power of attorney, the checklist, the value of that checklist, it might be a bit intrusive. And I think practitioner, a client go, can't you just handle this for me? No, you've got to put the facts together so that the return can stand. So the value of the questions in the checklist is immeasurable. So you're right on the money.
Yeah, and one thing that I also maybe just want to add there is when we look at the engagement letters, one part of that is actually file inspection. So for me as a tax practitioner, I've got to keep records of everything that I file. So that if the guys from SAIT or from SAIPA wants to come do a file inspection, I've got proof of everything that I submitted on that return. So I think that's just another thing.
Very important.
We obviously have to keep records of that. Yeah, so I think the next question that I just jotted down is where to find a good tax consultant. And I think maybe just off the bat, there's a lot of different papers. You can go look in the newspaper, you can go check on Google, you can go onto Facebook and stuff. But I think just the key thing that I want to get out there is people, please look for references, because if you just do a little bit of homework, you can already see what the quality is of that person's work. I take where we live down in Fishhook, there used to be a lady here that used to do tax returns, and she was one of those people that charged like 100 Rand. But if you go look at your reviews, everybody's complaining because she just doesn't do what she's supposed to do, and she doesn't belong to a controlling body. So it's nothing, you're left at your own mercy if you work with those type of guys. So I think just when you find a tax consultant, is make sure that you look wherever you want. Word of mouth is still the best. So if you've got somebody that does your tax return, you're happy with that guy's service, remember to mention it to your friends as well. And I think even if you had to contact somebody like SAIT and say, listen, I'm based in whatever area I am, give me a name of a couple of tax consultants in the area, that is also a really good place, because you know that guy belongs to the right institute. Anything you maybe want
that can help. We can give referral. Right now we do it by phone.
Yes.
So you'd probably have to contact that way. And I've done that. And typically, you just said one of the benefits of being SAIT is I know the subspecialist. So when I'm looking, it's not just finding a good person. I'm trying to find the good person right for your job.
Yes.
So in some cases, when it comes to returns of IT-14s and IT-12 corporate returns, a lot of it's location. Again, maybe location isn't as important as it used to be because of remote. I think location is still important, but you want to know who's the right person.
Yes.
Because they might be great, but if they're not the right person, they're going to charge you too much and you're going to get too little, even
Yes.
if they're well-intended.
Yeah.
So that is important. And yes, you should check around. And I think, unfortunately, we get sloppy and we get lazy. We do this also like building on a house, right? If you want to have your house builder, oh, the guy seems a nice guy and you sign with the first one. You really need to have a couple references because it could be a lot of money at stake, and better safe than sorry.
Yeah, for sure. And so the next question quickly, and I think this is also, it adds on nicely with what we discussed before, is the most expensive tax practitioner the best? Should people be chasing after price, or must they rather look at the quality? And
I think the key is price is an indication, but it isn't necessary. So you're right. I mean, the key price can be, a little bit. Well, I guess this is the bottom line. If it's too cheap, maybe you have a problem. Yes. So you need to do a price comparison, but the right one.
Yeah.
So in an individual return, typical individual returns I hear typically 2,000, maybe 3,000 Rand, which those are commoditized inventory. So those are assuming that, you've got medical aid, you've got maybe one savings account, maybe you're doing retirement contributions. And so they're done quickly. So when somebody charges that little, they're assuming it's only going to take 30 minutes to 1 hour. And even though you'd say, oh, I got a flat fee, they're not going to commit more than 30 minutes to 1 hour on that.
Yes.
And that's fine. In many cases, if your return is simple, go for it. If the person's a good person, then they can churn it out. But if you know that you've got a more complicated return, you don't want to take that price because then that person's not going to do the due diligence required. So yes. Price is hard.
Yes.
And the other one is you'll find too that an expert often in certain areas of the tax will cost more than the generalist.
Yes.
Right? So if I'm a wealth planning specialist, right? So I'm going to set up your trust and I'm going to do the trust returns and all of those things. You might find that price is going to be higher and you can get put off, but they can do the job faster.
Yes.
So the other guy is charging 6 or whatever, let's say he's charging 2,000 and the expert is charging 3. The 3 guy will get it done in an hour. The other guy is going to get it done in 3 or 4. So yes. Price can be a funny thing. You have to understand that it's an indicator, but it's not an obvious one. It doesn't work the way you think.
For sure. And I think just maybe another thing that I would want to mention there as well to justify the price that the tax consultants do charge. We were talking about CPD just now and belonging to institute, there's professional fees attached to that. Those things doesn't come for free. Yeah. So somewhere during the year, my license used to be able to practice as a tax practitioner. I'm just going to make it a round figure. Let's call it 10,000 Rand that I've got to pay. I've got an office to pay, I've got staff to pay and all that type of stuff. So now, for instance, I charge 2,000 Rand for a return. People don't see all the cost that I have to incur to be able to provide that service. And not only that, if I look at that process that we talked about just now, I've got to do some due diligence in the onboarding process. I've got to ask you the questions. We've got to prepare the documents, the engagement letters, the power of attorneys, managing the review or the audit and all that type of stuff. But the filing of the return is only 1/10 of what we're actually doing. So now people look at 1/10 and they think, no, but you want to charge me 2,000 Rand to press one button. But they forget about the other 9 or 10 steps in the process because we have to follow the process. We haven't got a choice because that is what our institute requires of us. And I think that is also something that people must keep in mind. So if somebody comes and says, no, I'll charge you 200 Rand to do the return, and realize that all that guy's going to do is he's going to hit the submit button, but he's not going to do the other 9 steps that you have to have in place if you want to file a tax return. So I think that's something that people must maybe just keep aware, when they start looking at prices. Probably the most expensive guy is probably going to overkill when he's doing a return, but the cheapest guy is definitely not going to be doing the right job when he files your return as well. And the question is about risk. How much risk are you willing to take on? Because if that guy just presses that file button and SARS comes back, then he's going to chase after you and say, listen, but why didn't you declare this on your return? Why didn't you declare that? Then you're going to be in trouble, so at least, So I think that's just something, just on price, I think a valid argument, to justify why accountants actually charge what they charge. Accountants also studied wrong. Most guys study 5-6 years to qualify as accountant. We've got to write board exams and all that stuff. And so It's the same
I
as
agree.
taking your car for a service. If you take your car to BMW, it's going to cost you 5,000 Rand. Take it to a backyard mechanic, it's going to cost you 500 Rand. But what is the risk that you're exposing yourself to? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, for instance, builders is a good example. I mean, I remember I had a builder and he didn't have any qualification. He did some work for me before. He looked like a nice guy. He put up a ceiling for me. You know, he did that plastering of the ceiling. And it was beautiful until 6 months later, it collapsed. And that's what happened. And to some extent, a tax return can collapse. So the point you mentioned earlier, which you didn't mention again, was practice management file. You're not just pushing the button. You're trying to make sure that when SARS comes calling, that all the documents are there that SARS needs.
Yes.
And that when the SARS asks is a quick response. And if that's not there, that's a major issue because SARS views that as a red flag. So if it was done on a wing and a prayer and all the numbers were just thrown in and SARS goes, well, where's the medical aid certificate? Where is the donation certificate? Where is the retirement contribution? Where's the IRP-5 for payroll? And you can't respond to that quickly. SARS immediately will log into that and say, you filed a return without substantiation and you're paying for that practice management. So what you're paying for, again, it's like insurance. Cheap insurance, can you trust it? Really, a practitioner is an insurance that when you file that return, it's going to stand. Yeah. And that does cost a little bit of money, hopefully not excessive, but you got to be paying for something.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Yeah, and I think that's a list of questions that I wanted to discuss with you. And is there maybe anything else that you maybe want to add or mention that for the viewers out there?
Yes, no, I think, what I can see in the world is, about tax compliance. And right now, I mean, SARS is on the drive for tax compliance. So, you can play the game where you're going to file a return or no file a return, but then SARS is catching up. And what I think taxpayers have to be aware of is false compliance. Filing returns that don't stand is a false compliance. Don't misuse your practitioner and think he's a shield, because it doesn't help you. At the end of the day, if the tax practitioner is wrong and not qualified, all the penalties, all the interest will fall on you, the taxpayer. And so I think that's your point, and I'm just trying to emphasize that.
Yes, yeah, lovely. Yeah, thanks, Keith. I really appreciate your time. And just for everybody viewing, if you guys want to go check out their website, I think, what is the website of SAIT?
It's the www.thesait, SAIT, THESAIT.org.za. The reason why it's got the SAIT is there's some sort of seeing eye society that took up the SAIT website. Yeah. But just put in SAIT and you'll get there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so all you guys watching the video, go check out their website as well. Like I say, you'll find a lot of valuable insights and stuff on there as well. I really love the people from the site. I'm obviously connected to a lot of different tax practitioners out there. And one thing that I can say about SAIT is that the technical support is excellent. The people rave, they can't start talking about how well the accountants and the tax practitioners get supported by them. So I really want to thank Keith for his time this morning. Thanks, guys, for watching the video. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe as well to the channel. And yeah, happy filing. Hope you guys have a good tax season. Thanks for your time, Keith.
Thanks.
Okay.